So who's here is first time ever joining our user group? Has everybody been here before?
First time.
First time, welcome. So glad you came. I think we parked next to each other in the parking lot. So when you were looking around, I'm like, he looks lost. But you disappeared before I got a chance to say, come with me. Imagine if he wasn't here for the user group and he's like, I'm here to get some food. I'm like, no, come with me. Glad you came. So what made you come? What interests you about this meeting that made you say, let me take a listen?
Right now, I'm unemployed. I'm looking for a second list position.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm from Ukraine.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew in Raleigh. Yeah, and I have a background Android developer,
Uh-huh.
language Kotlin.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, it's PowerShell for stock analysts. It's very important.
All right. Well, one of the interesting things about PowerShell is like if you go to a Citrix group or a VMware group or a database group or an application like a ServiceNow meeting, PowerShell is utility. And so everybody here probably has a different role. But of all of us can use that tool to help our work get done faster. Whereas if you're a DBA and you go to a DBA meeting, you're going to talk just about databases. Here, we're going to talk about how you can use a utility, PowerShell, to help you do whatever you do better. And so what Jermaine does versus what I do versus what Elaine does, we all do different roles, but we all use the tools to help us do it faster and at scale. And so that's the beautiful thing about PowerShell. That's why we're able to talk about so many different topics. And so we're going to get started in just a few minutes. I also wanted to point out to you guys, we want to introduce Greg Onstadt online. Greg, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
So Greg is on the West Coast. He's out in California. And
Seattle, California.
Seattle. Washington. Same shit.
Yep,
Not
we're
here.
close.
Yeah.
It's like, American, geography.
Yeah. I should know because I hung out with him in Seattle. We had ramen together. But Greg is associated with PowerShell.org and the PowerShell Summit, which is going to be coming up in April. Most of us have been to the summit more than once, maybe multiple times. Phil's going to be there this year. I will not be there this year. Greg is one of the planners of the event, and he wanted to give everybody just a little bit of information about what the summit is, if you were interested in considering. It is a big event. It is probably the biggest PowerShell event in the country this year. It's in Seattle, and we'll probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 350 people to 400 people, but you're going to have access to people and resources probably much different than any other conference you've ever been to. And so at that point, maybe I'll hand it over to Greg here. He can talk a little bit about the event, and Phil and I can just fill in on anything that we might not cover. So Greg, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about PowerShell Summit and what we got in store this year.
Well, you introduced me pretty well, but Phil, I threw a link into the chat if you want to share that out. I'm not in with my PowerShell account, so I can't share right now. But
Made you presenter.
oh, then I will share it. So the link is in the chat so everybody can see it if they'd like. But something new this year, two new things is the Summit Challenges. We've got a new page to talk through those here. But this one is brand new. I don't think anybody else on the call has heard it yet. We're doing a new workshop on the Sunday before Summit with Stephen Murawski. ISE, Terraform, GitHub Copilot, all how to do infrastructure as code. So this is going to be just a $75 add-on, and I believe it's going to be about 4 hours, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's going to be hands-on, and if you want to join it, once you have your main ticket, you can just click the purchase workshop ticket here. The other item that's new on that page, well, if you haven't noticed, you can see every scheduled event down below here as well. but the summit challenges are new this year. It's hands-on self-paced activities you do throughout the week. So it's not just sitting in a session for the hour or 45 minutes or whatever it is. This is a challenge you will work on throughout the week. They will have prizes. Some of them are at one of them, I think the suggestion was $125 as their grand prize for the first place winner. So should be fun.
Yeah, the additions I want to say with Summit itself, and it's not like any conference you'll ever go to. Primarily is that the idea is that it's small enough and you're going to directly interface with so many of the people who are there. And so you've gone to some other conferences where there's, 10 to 30,000 people and you're just, swimming in the ocean. And that's not what Summit is. And it's a very focused, you're going to meet a ton of great people. Those people are engaged. They want to participate with you. The hallway conversations are awesome. The actual breakfast and lunch conversations are just what that is. It's all about on top of the sessions itself. So the people who are definitely worth it.
Excellent.
So
So just
all the new things this year are designed to enhance the in-person experience too.
So nobody really said it. So you might be wondering what the summit is. So it's a 4-day event in Seattle, and it's sort of the biggest and brightest of the community that come get together and share knowledge. And so it'll be represented by all the major cloud providers and all the major tool vendors, but not in a vendor role where they're there trying to interest you to buy their services. It is a community-focused event where everybody is sharing how they use PowerShell to do things better. And so it's 4 days sessions. I think the total is about 50 sessions for the week. But along with just going to sessions, you're having breakfast, you're having lunch, you're having dinner. There's social events if you want to participate, and you get to go out and you get to spend time with people in the community. The PowerShell team is there, representatives from people on the AWS side and GCP, and all the major tools. Chocolatey team will be there, and all these people are people that we've had speak at our user group over the years. And so you get to do exactly what we do in the user group, but on a bigger scale. Really get to learn from them. And so we're not selling this event because we get something from it. We're all volunteers who all participated in the event. Just know that the people that go to the event come away and say that this kind of a unique experience that I never got to do before. So if you're interested in considering it, there's a website. You can go to PowerShell.org or PowerShell Summit. You can search for online, and the event is in April, and it's a really fantastic event. And Seattle's a fun place to go. So there's lots of fun stuff to do. And so if anybody has any questions about that, you can reach out to us or you can contact Greg online. Be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
So we'll get started in just a minute. Are you talking next?
Yeah, I could do that. Sure.
You're going to do your
Sure.
meeting in 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
that was the other thing. So we will meet again and we'll do 2 weeks and then probably do another. Dan Greenhouse is going to do March in person.
What's he gonna do?
He's going to, what did he say? The struggles with AI, with Copilot,
Oh,
something like
geez.
that.
All right.
Yeah.
So we are trying to get back to meeting twice a month. For a long time, we've always met on the first Wednesday of the month. This is the third Wednesday of the month. We did for a very long time, and then we took a break with COVID and we came back. And so we've had some mixed success, and we're looking to reestablish that schedule. We have some events planned with Tech Systems that'll be bigger than this. They have a brewery that they're building right next door. They'll be open in 2 months, so we're going to host some events there. And as you can imagine, if you're interested, there'll be some alcohol involved, which always makes for better meetings. But Phil and I have done together over 200 meetings. We have a YouTube channel. All of our meetings get recorded and we post them there. So if you want to go back and follow something or learn about a topic. And so we've covered what we feel is the gamut. And so we're going to, for a while now, we're going to go back and cover some of the core concepts. And so Phil started with that tonight. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be talking about how to parse logs with PowerShell. An intro. It's not going to go incredibly deep. It's more about to show you what the possibilities are. Surface up 5 or 10 commandlets that you may or may not be familiar with and show you how myself and Phil and others we might work Phil has talked about this topic in the past, and he's focused on parsing the Windows event logs, which if you're familiar with Windows, are in a special format, EVTX. And so I'm going to be talking about parsing more of your traditional text-based logs. And just to give you an idea of some of the tools that you could use to pull some data out of logs, make some inferences, find data, subtract data from the logs, make reports. And so we'll be talking about that in 2 weeks. And that is going to be beginner focused. So we'll be going back to the basics and talking about how do we import a log? How do we save the results from a log to a variable and start to parse it out? And what are some of the different ways that we can slice and dice that data? So I hope you join me for that. And then following that, in the near future, we're going to have an AI meeting as well, right? AI and PowerShell with another local speaker, Dan Greenhouse, who works for MetLife in the security team.
The issue with vibe coding, that's what his topic is going to be called.
Yeah.
So he said, basically, I spent, the past 12 hours vibe coding and he wants to talk about it. I'm like, all right, that sounds good.
So this is our YouTube channel. And so if you want to know something about PowerShell, chances are we've talked about it. So we invite you to go and take a look. All of our meetings are up there. Good resource.
Yeah.
But tonight, Phil's going to be talking about.
I'm going to basically getting started with PowerShell. And so my spiel at this point is I really want to make it an interactive conversation. And so the idea is I have some kind of, hey, scripted kind of, hey, let's talk about some things, but I want it to be interactive. I want to ask questions like, hey, what about this? And I'm going to ask questions at that point too. And so I'd like to get an interaction, and I certainly want interaction from those who are remote, but of course I definitely want people who are in the building and to ask questions, And so there was 1 or 2 people that are brand new. What is your experience with PowerShell right now? Are you kind of brand new?
Been doing it for a while.
Okay.
We've been here.
Yeah, you've been doing it for a while. So hopefully you get some nuggets out of it too, but then also hopefully we can kind of, explore and share with the community as large. It's just like, hey, here's what's good and here what you can work from. So, we want to kind of share overall.
Yeah, so Phil's going to lead the discussion, but we essentially every meeting, what happens is we always have a very knowledgeable attendees that attend online, or in this case, there's guys here in the room that have done it before. And so we want people to give their insights, like say, oh, that's great, but that's not the way I usually do it. I do it this way. And that's really what we're trying to go for here. This is not meant to teach you like a class. I always tell people that these meetings are meant to be idea starters. So you hopefully come away with some ideas that you want to take back to work or back home and explore a little further. I saw how Phil did that. I'd like to try that myself. This is not structured learning. And so Phil may skip around some things that are core,
Yep.
how to do something to try to get through a topic a little faster. But
Or actually just, talk off the cuff,
Yeah.
right? I am not a presenter who likes slides. I can do that, but I think there's more value in actually just watching somebody work. And that's one of the values in that, I think it's unique in our group, right? Is that we are a group of people who are not about, coming and sitting at a presentation and just like watching and, watching and reading slides, right? So that's not what you'll get from here. So,
do you want to do an intro? I think we should.
okay.
Right? We need a way to start.
All right. Yeah, I didn't put a slide together, but
That's okay. We'll put it in later. I
okay.
didn't make a graphic, so
Yeah, I noticed that.
shit happens.
Should happen.
All right. Are we recording yet?
Yeah,
We are. Okay. We'll just do an intro. Like we'll stand in front of the camera. That way we have something.
want to do that again? We can sit there like we
Yeah.
did before.
Yeah. So we record all our meetings, and part of the fun is watching us screw up the intro. Basically, every week that we do this, and then figuring out how to make it look good later on.
Actually, so, yeah, Herman, we can turn off your camera because otherwise you're going to be on camera.
Yeah, so a couple of simple rules. We certainly want everybody to participate, and we want everybody to feel like you can participate. But because what's going to put this on YouTube, background noise becomes a problem. So we usually ask everybody, if you know that you don't want to be on camera, please shut off your cameras. And if you have a laptop and you joined into the meeting, just mute your mic so we don't, we've had in the past people like opening up potato chip bags and stuff you never even think about. So, other than that, we'll get started here and then we'll take it away. You want to come over here? Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another meeting of the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name is Mike Kanakis and my partner in crime here, Phil Bossman. Tonight, Phil, what are we going to be talking about tonight?
We're gonna talk about the basics, getting started.
Oh, what a great topic. I just started a new job. I'm 4 weeks in and my team is a very talented team, but a little bit new to PowerShell. And so we've been talking about the basics. And so really good topic that's relevant to what I'm doing. Who's our speaker tonight?
I'm the speaker tonight.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. Right, so we're gonna talk about the basics at this point. We're gonna say, getting started, what are the basic things you need to know to get started? So there is, well, let me say, not what you need to know to get started, is here are the fundamental building blocks you can use to get yourself beyond where it is. And so one of the things that I value in PowerShell is the discoverability of what it is, right? And so you'll discover in a little bit is that you use the language to discover more about the language. And that's what we'll get into later tonight.
Awesome. And so if you're watching at home, we meet once a month. We'd love to have you come and join us in person. You can find us at rtpsub.com. This is a meeting that's going to be a little bit more core concept in nature. But what we find is that most people come away with something out of all of our meetings because we usually do a pretty good job of covering things or ancillary items that people did not realize was possible. So even though this might be a core concept focused meeting, there's going to be something in here for everybody. So we hope you enjoy it. And we'll take it away. We'll hand it over to Phil.
All right. I think one of the things when you're getting started with PowerShell is that, hey, you launch the PowerShell window and you go, all right, what do we do next? You know, what's happening and what's this kind of crazy thing? I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about what I see on my screen, and then we'll talk about, you know, hey, you're going to see some things happen on my screen that are unique where it is, and I'll interject some of those things where it happens to be, right? And so it's just a shell in that form. It is a terminal that can do commands directly. You know, we're going to say get process and we're going to do some stuff. Why is that so slow? I don't know. Sharing. Hopefully it doesn't give me craziness. So you can run commands when you're in the shell. You can also run them as a script. And so we'll talk when you go to scripts and people write scripts and consume scripts in that form is effectively they're just running it in the console at that point. So they need to kind of potentially think of things in that form. So just in that fashion. So if I'm going to run a script, CDR, anything a string. Right? So it ran the code and then it outputted some other stuff back, right? And so what I saw in the console is actually just dumping the output of the script itself, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about this script at this point, but hey, this script actually outputted some content. It can actually do some work and not output some content. It can do other things as far as streams and stuff like that. That's kind of not an advanced topic, but it's something a little bit deeper. And so I want to first start off going back to, now I'm going to use VS Code. Wow, that is slow delayed. All right, I hope I can work through this. You guys can see at this point. So is to start off, well, what can you do, right? There is this concept called get command, and I want to start with get command. And the reason I start with get command is that is the first part of the discoverability of what you're looking for. Hey, what do I do? Well, I can go get the commands that are out there, and that'll give me pieces about the tooling that I can use, and then go beyond, right? So we'll see how long this runs.
So let me jump in and just add. So one of the things that makes PowerShell a really useful language is it's a language that's fairly easy to consume. Commandlets have a verb noun syntax, and they're easily readable. So as Phil is writing the commands or typing, you probably can make inferences about what those commandlets do based on the name. But in case you don't know, there are some things built into PowerShell that help you learn about the language, whether it be help about a command, learn what commands are out there, or learn what properties of a command has. And so we often say that that's the starting block for a lot of people with PowerShell. The three basic commandlets that everybody should learn first. And that's kind of what Phil is starting with here. One of those being get command. And so I'll turn it back over to you, but there are some things built in to help you learn the language if it's completely foreign to you and you're trying to learn about what is possible.
Yep. And so that, I know it's not completely forward at this point, but I said get command, and then I just wrapped it in the parentheses. Hey, I put it, and then I just did a count. So just counting. And so of all the things that are on my machine today, there are 36,000 things that it can do, right? And so that form, as far as commands themselves, as raw commands that are not scripts. So a script effectively is doing those sub things underneath, but the commands themselves that are installed where you are straight up to that point, as leading into.
So how would you have 36,000 commands? How, like, that seems like a lot.
So it's all broken down into modules underneath that, and those modules, we'll look at some of that as well.
So PowerShell is extensible. So the built-in set of commands that comes is in the thousands, but Phil has a number of modules that he installed that layers on top of that. And so when you work with PowerShell for a long time and you start to work with a bigger tool set of modules, the commandlet base of the possibilities can grow quite large. And Phil probably only has a very small set of modules installed for yourself, but they're probably, I'm guessing maybe some of the Azure or AWS modules are in there, but you could have a pretty large pool of commandlets at your fingertips. That's kind of why we preach that you need to learn those three commandlets that we're going to talk about, is because you can't learn 36,000 commandlets. It's just not possible. And so you need a way to have a reference and to be able to recall information. And so that's what he's referring to here.
Yeah. And so at a meta level, we're kind of talking, Mike just led into before, is this idea of there's a verb dash noun, right? And we say it specifically in that form, verb dash noun. That's not a true requirement for the language itself. So if somebody writes something that doesn't conform to that, well, it still works, but it's not the design structure that will get you things for free, right? So some of the stuff that if you get into an advanced state, people write some stuff, you get some other things called commandlet binding, and you get some other things for free out of the box. But what I mean by that is that if they write it in the PowerShell way, then things come for free. So up on the screen I have at this point is the idea is like, hey, so we are going to get a process. We are going to revoke like an Azure disk access, right? So that whole point is you're doing something to an object, right? And I put up there too is processes, not get processes. You don't say get processes, you get process, because ultimately, if you do in the PowerShell world too, if you do it to one, you should be able to do it to 100. 10,000 doesn't really care. That is that lesson that you always want to learn, is that you can do it. Invoke DBA query, right? Hey, I want to do something to this other thing over there, right? I can even write verbose, right? And so at that point is that I can write to something. I can add or remove and all that kind of stuff, right? And so we can even run some of these if we want. And it just got one process or all the processes. And so because I didn't give it any other input, its default behavior was go get me all the processes, right?
And there was a huge delay. I was just looking at your screen and you're scrolling and I'm like, I see nothing.
I know, it's there's something with that this connection is just god awful.
I had to switch to my hotspot. I couldn't get the internet to work.
Yeah,
Oh, it's just in the room?
I'm on my hotspot because I couldn't get Teams to actually connect through my machine. So hopefully we can make this work and I'm not too delayed beyond at least what's displayed on screen. So getting processes, the whole thing. And so I just have a couple of commandlets here, and the term is commandlets, right? They're not called commands because you execute commands down at a different layer. That's what the system itself is going to do. If you're actually working on a Windows itself in the command prompt, those are commands. And then these are commandlets because they give you an extension beyond that. Right. So we talked about verbs. Well, we could just say, go get me all the commands that have a verb of get. And scroll, 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 scroll. So what the heck was all that, right? And so of all the get commands, and so all it is just to get something at the end, get something at the end, right?
You have to slow down. The demo is nowhere near where you are. Just so you know.
Yeah, I might have to just look up there. That'll be weird. Yeah. To this point. So, and are we seeing at the point? So in the same thing, this is like the formal way in which to do it is to, hey, there is a structure of, parameters. So we can, you know what, I don't think I actually talked directly about that. Let me see, should probably be better out here. I'm going to use the console itself, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. The get command, and you're going to see some.
Are you on a hotspot now?
Oh,
Maybe you shouldn't be on a hotspot.
wow. I can try and switch. If this lets me switch. Doesn't kill on the session.
Luckily, this gets edited out when we post it to.
That was like 4 seconds. 4 seconds, like 9 seconds.
You should do a no profile terminal and
I-
give a smaller
No, it's
subset.
the screen, it's the screen refresh. Do the people online see it, or is it just,
I think it doesn't help that we're all sitting on the same Wi-Fi in the same team session.
yeah,
I think the guest Wi-Fi here is probably
wow.
super limited down. And your hotspot is probably better, but it's probably not much more bandwidth.
Yeah.
I've only got LTE.
That's keeping up.
I'm keeping up. So I jumped to the console and I ran something called get help. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but this gives you a view of what the structure will look like, is that there's the command and then it has parameters at this point. And so again, if you live within the console, you can get parameters, right? So commandlets have parameters and they can also receive stuff into those parameters at something called a pipeline later on, and we'll go from there. So it helped. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to jump to that. I think I'm jumping ahead and jumping back and forth. So that's why this is called get command, get. So we did the idea of give me all the sets. And it scrolls way fast off the screen. You know what? Actually, I'm going to look at this. I like the idea of get set because you look at this other one and going, hey, you said everything was, verb dash noun. What is this thing called set and why is there no noun or verb or what is that? So then I can say get command set all by itself, set all by itself. You go, oh, this other thing, it actually is calling set dash variable. So it is an alias back to something called set. So ultimately underneath everything, everything wants to be a verb dash noun. So just because you see some other things, it could be something else. It says its type is an alias. So we're not going to talk about types at this point, but you can still do the same thing. So similar in the same vein, talk about new items, similar exactly where it is. Now, the next question is, hey, what's this concept called approved verbs? So you can't just do any Open is definitely one. I'm trying to think of one of the ones that are like used often, but you can't say marinate to something, that doesn't work. So this is a list of types too. And so as far as like data is concerned, this is the like almost like approved stuff or kind of the standard that people are using in the community as far as importing data. Right? If you were working with data, you import it, export it, you do other things, you merge some of those things. If you're looking for something to do with like connections for networking stuff, well, yeah, those are connections and connect, disconnect, read, receive. That's what you would use. So similar, actually, I think it's on here. When I was writing a command line. The security, there you go. So I wrote a commandlet and I was like, hey, should I be using remove? And then I realized, well, probably because it was a security related, I said, because I was using, add and remove, access to this other thing. Well, that didn't become very descriptive enough. And so I thought, it's really granting access to this thing. It's revoking access from that thing. So I'm like, okay, that's probably a better name. And it gets back because also it conforms to the security group, right? So if I say get verb, my group, security. So here I am just discovering what it is. So this isn't anything. So as far as all the approved verbs within the security grouping, here's all the things that really you should be doing at this point, protecting, unblocking, but also revoking and granting. So I think that was a better place when I was creating it. And so you can use the language to actually discover how to use the language even more. Right. So that's what the verbs are. We talked about the verbs. Any questions?
Could you run that, say get dash verb dash group and then do a space and then tab through that to see your groups? If you didn't fill in security.
You didn't, yes. So it will tab complete.
Okay.
It will tab complete. And then there is if you're using PowerShell 7, there is a module that comes in baked in. It's called PS Readline, PowerShell Readline, that gives you a bunch of other stuff that gives you kind of saw some of that when I was working. And I'm going to
PowerShell is like context aware. So depending where you are in that command that you're typing, depending what you're asking for, it can return parameter,
screencast.
different things like that. If you're doing something file-based, it could show you file
If I hit
paths.
Control space, I now have a graphics window of all the groups. I can use left, right, to do that. And I'm using screencast, which is just a VS Code thing. So it tells me what I'm typing, so you can see. So by doing that, get verb, Control space, and then I get this other thing. So you could do the same thing. I don't know what parameter I want to use. So I'm going to get verb minus Control space. Here's all the options that are the parameters I can get. And so I use that as a discoverability oftentimes. So I'm going to kind of jump away back here again. See. Right. So I clear the screen, CLS. Get. Right. We're just going to S3 bucket kind of thing. Right. And then dash, Control space. Hey, here's all the things that the S3 bucket commandlet does. Right. So I don't have to, I can use this later on, we'll talk about it, but we're jumping all over the place. This is a lot of fun, right? Hey, what are the things I need to have to actually use this commandlet? Oh, I need a bucket name. I might need a region. Maybe I can also use the endpoint URL. Maybe we're here because they used the standard form. Hey, it will enable verbose. Hey, and there it is, And so it added that. You added the verbose output. If I didn't use verbose, hey, it just gives me an error. So you get some extra details when it does it. So actually, there's a verbose. Then if you're also learning, there's a debug. So it may or may not add some details to where it happens to be, and we'll kind of talk about some other stuff. Yeah, you got some debug output, because this is also one that gives you, that's why I wanted to add the debug, because not everything offers debug output or even verbose output, but you have the verbose output twice. It gave out debug information, and then this is actually what came out the back end, right? And it put it out that point. So I didn't really, and so we didn't really talk. So at the bottom too, this is all of your history. So I'm gonna F2. So now I don't get my history, but it kind of in line. I think one of the other points I want to put here too is you led into, and thanks for the question back there, is I can use that same structure by just putting get S3 control space. It goes and looks up, it tries to complete the entire thing, right? One of the other things is when you're getting started with PowerShell is everybody says, or hears me always say, tab complete is your friend. I don't freaking know nothing. I just tab it where I need to go, or I'll use this. Hey, give me this far, and then I need this one, right? Hey, bucket website. All right, so then hit tab. Oh.
So the thing to understand here, so first off, let me just say, Phil truly does not know anything. I will second that. He does not know anything. But there's a lot of forgiveness in the PowerShell language. It's not a language like Linux. We'd use like Bash or something like that, where you have to specifically type exactly the right syntax and search for the exact thing. PowerShell is an object-oriented language, and part of that is tab completion. So you can start to type in characters that match, and if there is a match, you can tab complete to see what's there. So that becomes your friend, because once you get familiar with the commandlets, you can work very fast. You can type just a few letters, tab across and complete things. And then Phil had mentioned PS Reline. PS Reline is an extension from Microsoft that is doing some intelligence, some machine learning behind the scenes, and has some intelligence, and is trying to predict what it thinks you're going to type or want to type based on your past history. And so what a lot of people will find is that the suggestions, which you see on the screen here in the gray italic text, are actually what you would want to do next. The more that you use PowerShell and PS Reline learns more about how you work, it gets better at predicting what it thinks you might want to do. And if we were working in the IDE, like VS Code, and we were using some of the extensions in there, it could expand past just suggesting a one-liner. You can actually have multi-lines of text that it could try to suggest, oh, I see you're writing a loop. Let me fill in the rest of the loop for you. So there's a speed option to PowerShell that doesn't exist in a lot of languages, because you can type a little and get a lot very quickly.
We'll leave that out here. So, hey, within this, so quickly what I did, you might even see, hey, we talked about this thing get command. We noticed within a module, hey, get command. And so, and this is the name of the module that I just tab completed to give me there, right? And so it listed out all the commandlets inside of that module, right? And then I saw that hey, there's this, I know what it is, but hey, this looks appropriate. Hey, there is a key handler. All right, well, there's something about key handlers. I don't know what that does. Maybe I can go use another tool later on, help to tell me more about that. Right? Because ultimately, I just quickly look at this and going, okay, so I can get something, I can set something, I can remove something. All right, so there might be something that I need to be setting, right? So in that same structure, hey, if it's something I can get, well, most likely, or if I need to set it, there should be at least something that says I can get it first. So I should be able to set all of these options directly. And so some of these options are, what does a prompt look like? What does all these other pieces go? Right? These are all the direct options that you can control in line with PowerShell itself. So, hey, commands, they go from here, and this is just stuff here. You just look here. Show tooltips, true. Hey, a bunch of other stuff. Ringtones, what's your prompt text, extra prompt count, right? It actually holds your history in a different place. So I can roam my profile around. So it will, my history will follow me around, if assuming I'm roaming it around within a domain or some other thing. So that's another valuable thing. So, wow, we did a bunch of stuff there.
You guys have any questions? Something that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense you want to know a little bit more about?
I was just gonna throw out, because you mentioned, Linux or Bash or other languages, that PowerShell is not case sensitive, like lots of other.
Correct.
Well, wait. PowerShell is not case sensitive, but PowerShell in a Linux server is case sensitive. It's not PowerShell is not case sensitive. It's the OS it's running on defines the case sensitivity of the environment you are on, right? And so PowerShell is cross-platform. So it does work on Linux boxes and it works on Mac, it works on Windows, right? And so when you're in a Windows world, so Tab Complete's your friend too, and it's non-case sensitive. But when you're in the Bash shell or Linux, it will be case sensitive. And so if I open that too. So on Windows, but yeah, I do have, Ubuntu on here and it will do that. So PowerShell's here as well, so I can see that. We don't need to get there. I'll keep going. But I appreciate the insights there. All right, so what are we gonna do? Kind of cheated in the idea of like, go get me the command for a particular service. And so what's that look like? We're still in discovery mode. We're gonna go back to the discovery of like, hey, I want to do something that talks about services. All right, so let me go get the command. And then the noun I'm going to use is just service, or similar. Hey, I just want to do processes. Give me things about processes. But you saw me kind of do it a little bit. Is this idea is that, hey, wildcards work too, right? Is that I don't have to figure out what I can do. Is to give me the commands for all EC2 instances, right? And like just anything that is instance itself. Right, and you notice too, is that in this particular example, I put the wildcard at the beginning, so it has to end an EC2 instance. So these are, I can get, remove, restart, stop, an EC2 instance. But there's actually, put star on both sides, there's more stuff that interfaces with EC2 instances. Hey, get the monitoring for EC2 instances, just how they wrote those over. So there's a lot more commands that are available, or commandlets that are available for all of the different types that are working with EC2 instances as well. So I've been jumping around into different places, so I want to try and engage with them. We can also see, let's just talk about the bottom here at this point. So we see that we have a commandlet, it has a name, a version, and then we're talking about what module it's actually connecting from. And so AWS is kind of unique in that fashion. I think that we're going to talk about that. So that was EC2 instances we talked about. I'm going to jump around. And then here we are talking about EC2 as a whole, right? And so anything EC2, not just instances as a whole. But actually, I'm going to do, we did EC2 instances. I'm going to do something called piping. We're going to pipe it to measure, which is just shorthand for measure object, right? So of all the commands that can come there, I'm going to measure them. So I get a number, and there are 6 of them.
I don't really understand what you were doing there with piping. What was happening?
We're going to get to that. We're going to talk about piping later, or hopefully. So the whole idea is we will talk earlier. We kind of talked before. This is kind of an easy one because it's all on one screen. Is that what you see on the screen? We're going to get to like formatting in a little bit, but effectively everything in PowerShell is an object. Hey, I see this nice formatted list, right? It's actually a formatted list. So the PowerShell runtime, there's actually a thing called out default, which then decides how to best format what you have in front of you on the screen. You notice that it gave a big border in the middle and a bunch of stuff, right? So there's a lot of gap here, there's some gap over here, and I can actually pipe. I can take whatever it gave and I can send it out to a format table. I can say, I want to format this into the format that I want. Format table. See, I don't even know. I just tab complete. Table. Format.
You can see FT.
But I wanted FT, but I also want to show it out point. And you notice too, is I just, dash and hit A, tab complete. And then you auto size, hey, this looks a little bit different. Nothing's happening. It's just formatting, right? So I'm getting back the exact same objects. Now what I'm getting back is a formatted table of those objects, right? And so this whole idea is that I just taking objects and I'm passing them across this pipe commandlet, this pipe, and giving you other stuff. But ultimately, knowing too always is that what you're getting back is the object itself. So we did just a second ago, we did format into a table. So we're going to format it into a list. But notice too is that if we have a list, there's a lot more than is in there. There's some other properties that were just blank and they were hidden. Because this, hey, talked about the DLL or that DLL. So there are other components, objects within that piece that are not worth from there. So we're still in commandlets, then we'll get into objects in just a minute. So Mike jumped ahead as to go get me modules. Right. This is all the modules that are directly inside of my local scope. There is something else to say, go get me all the modules that are available. Should probably be easier. This is gonna take a second. Maybe easier to see on the this one. There goes all the things. They're running right off the screen. But so here's all the actual modules they live in different folders in the environment, right? And so as Mike alluded to a little bit ago, is I have a fair number of modules that I've then downloaded and installed from different places. And you see at this point, PS Readline was on here. Where did I see it? It was down the bottom. PS Readline was here. Hey, all the VMware ones, right? So you can take them. There's PowerShell Gallery, there's Azure modules. And then there's also PS Readline, there's PS Readline, the newest version. There's also Graph, and here's AWS. We'll talk about AWS in a little bit. So because I'm a cloud architect, I do a bunch of stuff in different environments, so I need to see them all. We'll go from there. Nope, that's fine. All right, so getting the count, we don't need to get the count. So, hey, just in that same form we talked about before, is that wildcards still work, You can say, go get me the modules, and then we're using that same discoverability of structure that we did for other things. If I can use these wildcards to go get me commands and get me detail about the commands, why can't I do the same thing for modules too, right? And so go get me the list of the modules that have Exchange in their name, right? And actually in this form, because I've reinstalled multiple times, I have multiple versions of the modules on my machine, right? Similarly, you can see 3 versions of Exchange. I have multiple different pieces. I have just this one for Azure. This is a Bicep module. It's not actually Azure. This is controlling Azure with Bicep in PS Rule. So that's what that is. Any other questions we're thinking through? We kind of jumped into, I think we jumped ahead.
Bill, I have a question.
Sure.
You had multiple versions of different modules. How does PowerShell know which one to load?
It will always load the last one, the newest one. So you don't have to worry about loading the right one. You can, it will auto import the newest one, but you can import an older version if you need to do that. But 90% of the time you will just install, when you install, it will give you the newest one. It will install the latest and then reuse the latest one from there. So just because you have multiple, it's the old ones there just for, so it won't remove, could still be in use, right? So there is a procedure to actually uninstall a legacy module, right? All right.
So Phil, on that, just a little bit more information, if you don't mind doing $env:"ps module path. env or environment.
That's what I get for having a big monitor and then try to do.
That's right. There you go. You may want to do -split. You will need the space. Oh, it took it without the space. I'm shocked. Anyway, the thing I wanted to point out here is I've seen this happen. It's happened to me before too, is if you have if you're getting the wrong version, it may be that an earlier path is loading the version because it won't overwrite a version. So for example, if he's got a version of 3.x in his PowerShell modules users directory, but then later down it goes to the PowerShell program files and it's got 4.x, it's not going to load the 4.x because it's already loaded the 3.x.
I'd also jump in here and say, maybe we assumed some things. I don't know if did we ever really explain?
Kind of talk a little bit about that, just, hey, what's inside modules, and then we're gonna talk about how to go get what your modules that you don't know what they are. We're gonna go find some module discovery.
Cool. Sorry if I stole your thunder, Phil.
No, man, this is, I think there's a section just talking about building modules, finding, yeah. You can just go, well, let's just do find AWS. We're gonna jump right over at that. I like this idea of just being organic and, talking about what people want to talk about and, just see where we go from there.
This was happening to us the other day.
What was happening? I didn't miss it.
Searching the PS gallery through command line wouldn't work.
Something about the AP. So I put the gallery here because I have an internal repository. So it's gonna keep failing and failing, trying to use my other repository. So, hey, we're talking about AWS. And so their module, there's some other pieces, but they've already claimed the name AWS. And so it's that point. So you know what? I'm having fun just jumping around. So we're gonna jump around. So we ran this thing called find module, give it just the name itself. Noting too is that you can just use a parameter called name, and I just assumed it's there. We can look at help and figure out when that's default anyway. But there's oftentimes you don't have to, it's called default parameters. So I'm going from this form, but I guess where I'm kind of why I want to talk about this here is we're talking about discovery, right? And I know I'm jumping into this idea of, hey, we kind of talked about piping and we're going to get to some piping later. Hopefully we'll talk, or we'll just do it organically and talk through it. There is a structure. Hey, I gave us all of these manlet, that's what came back. But now I want to take that and I want to do some work upon that. Well, let's do it. Let's, man, I want to sort something.
You want to mention real quick what PS Gallery is?
Well, yeah, I was going to, we'll get to this.
Okay, sorry.
So the PS Gallery that's a place to go. It is a repository of modules that you can use. And this is the PowerShell Gallery. And the PowerShell Gallery, and there's a link instead of having to jump to it. Hey, the PowerShell Gallery is a website that you could use to connect. So if you're in a Linux world, you understand, if you're, hey, a Python person, you've done Python in the past. Hey, I've pip installed something. Where do you think pip gets its stuff from? PyPy. That's where it gets the repository, right? Along with, what are some other NuGet repositories for other stuff, right? Chocolatey has its own repository. There's a repository. Effectively, it's the same structure underneath. It's just NuGet packages, right? And so that's what this is all bundled onto. AWS star. hey, here's the GUI version, or not GUI, but here's the web version of exactly what I just got you back on the console, right? So all of the things I just did, hey, now I got to click around. Let me click one. So we get, hey, this looks unfamiliar. Hey, look, this looks pretty familiar. This is how we install it. Or you can use install as this resource. Or you can, this is how you install it using Azure Automation. Or actually, it'll deploy into an Azure Automation. Or you can actually just manually go download the NuGet package. Right? And so,
Phil, may I ask?
Yep.
Who's responsible for securing the PS gallery? Is that a Microsoft?
it is a Microsoft service. And so anybody can publish to the gallery. And so when you say secure, just because it's on the gallery doesn't mean that somebody is like scanned it for viruses. They do some stuff, but there's no validation. It's like anything. It's like technically the Apple Store will kind of scan for viruses of anything you download from the Apple Store, but you can get malware there. Same thing in the Apple Store. PowerShell Gallery is the same kind of structure, right? There is some, automation that goes in and make sure that it's not apparent, but you could just as well download from the gallery things that.
So there is a risk associated with it. There is some risk.
It's open to the
Yeah.
community, so there are bad actors in the community. Yeah, you have to watch.
So, that's a,
Publishing it.
I'm not trying to be,
yeah, it's a new phenomenon, right? The tool was built for a community setting, and now people are realizing that it could be a vector for bad stuff. And so now you have to start rethinking a little bit.
Well, noting too is that, as you just saw, I've only installed the stuff that I want to install, right? And so to that form,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
And
I'm not
effectively,
trying to be alarmist. That was the word I was looking for. I just wanted to
No,
understand.
it's good to note that.
but it's good, it's certainly good to note that, and it is good to note too, is that you effectively take responsibility for whatever that happens to be. So I guess similar, now I'm just gonna want to talk about some of the other ones. We kind of talked about. Yeah, no, I'm gonna get module. 06 is completing for me. The list available. I like the list available. And so I'm just gonna pipe it to more, right? And more is just gonna get another alias to pageify what we're looking for. So it's gonna take everything I have. And the reason I wanna go in this fashion is I wanna just kind of talk about some of the modules that I've installed. Now, hey, for whatever reason oh crap, it's gonna look crappy. It's not designed to do that. You know what? I'm gonna cancel. I'm gonna do this again. But to that point is I want to talk about some of the modules where that are there. And technically I get them from, unknown sources. And so there are some modules here that are, I've installed myself or I've written myself. So effectively, do I trust Mr. Bossman? Not at all. I don't trust any of his stuff.
Thoroughly vetted.
Right? So, but, the community at large, you can get modules, and so long as you put them into the respective folder, it's just a folder, it's just a NuGet package, and there's a structure. For another topic as to what is the structure of a module itself, that will move along. So, but ultimately, the community itself says, hey, this is like the approved way to go. This is how we're going to deliver that functionality. So PnP is also a great module out there, which is, patterns and practices. And if you're working with SharePoint, you're doing a bunch of stuff with Azure, PnP is your way to go. Hey, there's a module to actually interface with PowerShell Git. That's what Posh Git is all about. So now I'm going to jump around and run the stuff. Hey, somebody wrote something about actually interfacing with the hosts file. Hey, then I can effectively the host file is just a straight thing, but you can codify it and build it that form. VMware, they offer their tooling as that version 8 Power VMware. I had previously the older versions, and actually I don't know why I have VMware vSphere on here. But, and it's the appliance and stuff. I should be using 13. So PS rule we talked about. PKI. So again, these are just modules that are out there that you can get commandlets from. So again, we can get command, this module name, and it will give me all of this pieces here. Hey, I can ping the iCert admin. I can do other things, write error messages and a bunch of other stuff. That's what it comes out. So I say it in this position because I do some discovery of getting other pieces. And so again, better credentials. You saw, I don't know if you saw it in my part itself. It adds some functionality to get commandlets at this point. All right, I'm gonna try and bring myself back into the flow here. So we talked about modules. Hey, we talked about what's it look like to install a module. Because I demoed it. Oh, there we go. It's kind of good. It gave me a bunch of stuff. Hey, version 4.2 is installed on the machine. Hey, you install version 3 because it reached out to the PowerShell gallery and says, hey, there's a new version. Do you want to do it? All right, well, I can use, hey, this other thing called dash force, parameter called dash force. So we're going to do dash force. Dash force. You know what I also like to do? I'm going to just throw verbose at the end of it. Again, we're talking about we're doing some discovery. Right? We got a warning, we saw it before. Now if we're gonna get some verbose output. Hey, again, verbose on the left. And it goes, and it downloads, and then does do an error. Something about certificates and how might be how we're pulling a bunch of stuff. It is not signed. I think it's some of our stuff. If you still want to install, use skip per publisher check. All right, let's do that. Because I trust them. Heck yeah. This is a certificate. So I gave it all verbose output. And so now I see all the stuff, but typically you won't see that. We go and install the module, and where did it put it? It put it into that path. And back to Stephen's comment is when I launch this, it's going to launch in my local repository. So 4.3 will be loaded before 4.2 in that form. So that is the possibility that, hey, I'm going to get 4.3, even though 4.2 is what's on the machine. Actually, you know what? We're just jumping all around, so I'm having fun with that. So we're going to do that. Oh, what did I say? Did exactly what we did before. So there are multiple module paths for launching the modules itself, right? And you notice too is that there is at the last case is there are modules installed on the system itself. So everybody on the entire system will get those modules, right? And only if you're in Windows PowerShell. But also here, this is in program files. There's also one strictly for 7. There's PowerShell itself. And then there's finally what's in my user profile. And so I'm going to get, when I do get command or get module, it will be the confluence of all 5 of those adding along, right? Similarly, the reason I have a different window open, you notice that there's this other PowerShell console. You notice that, hey, the user is a different user. This is my admin user. So when I typically install modules, and you're going to see me kind of do at this point, is again, tab completed my friend, tab completes your friend. Right? And so there's a thing called scope. Again, we're not going to go down deep into that at this point, but there is some other things to say, I want to install this module for everybody. So it doesn't get into the user scope, into the user folder. It actually dumps it into one of those other paths, right? It's going to then put it into the respective install path for the module itself so that every single user, because my A account, hey, those are the paths for my A account.
How does scopes work on Linux? Just out of curiosity.
There's still a scope. So find
The
out.
scopes is essentially a Windows problem, right? So you have the idea of user profiles, and then you have this all users profile. There's different permissions for those areas. So depending on how the machine is going to be used, you may want to install different profiles so that you don't have to have admin rights to be able to do things. I think for most of us, we probably have admin rights on our local machine.
Oh, you don't want to do that.
Okay. Here, how do I install it real quick?
Yeah, there is no real quick. You go to the instructions on the documentation for PowerShell and you install Linux that way on Ubuntu. If you do what you were going to do right there, it will install PowerShell, but it will install it into a read-only space and you won't be able to add any modules or anything to it.
There you
You'll want to
I'm having
know
a
how
lot
I
of fun
found.
just going off the cuff, so we'll get to where we are.
Yeah.
So getting started, how do you get PowerShell onto a Linux box? Let's go find out. PowerShell Linux install. Just Google spend your food.
Here you go.
There you go. Alpine. Debian package.
Scroll down. You weren't there yet. I thought they had a here's how you do it.
Alternate ways to install PowerShell on Linux. Or I'm going fast, probably be delayed for those on the screen. Let me get back to Ubuntu. I reinstalled Ubuntu. Install applications. Know it well enough.
It was right there. No, scroll back down. I'm sorry. It's under the purple for see install PowerShell on Ubuntu.
Looking for just the command. Well, let's just copy the whole thing. We have all this. Look at. That's what I'm looking for.
See, it goes and snags it onto the Microsoft repository keys. If you don't have all that stuff, you're gonna have a fun time.
All right, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna copy the whole thing and we're gonna trust the world.
What could go wrong?
I'm gonna install PWSH.
It's exactly what you should not do. So
Yeah.
let's all strap in.
It says Phil stuff, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully
There
it
we
does
go.
all
All
those
right.
sudo commands in order
And best of all,
correctly.
you know what we're gonna do? Is we're gonna let it go and we're gonna come back and we're gonna find out what happened. That's how we're gonna do it.
Bitcoin miner is gonna get installed.
YOLO, baby, YOLO. All right, where are we going? I'm having a good old time. I think we haven't even gone past number 1, right? Here we go. We're having fun. All right, I think we got to the end. Woohoo! We did some okay. So we installed some modules. We talked about what commands are and that point of thing like this point, right? So now,
Why don't we take a breath for a second? We covered a lot of stuff. Is there anything anybody wants to go back and go a little bit more in depth on before we cover more stuff? Online, does anybody have any questions? Or is there an area that you want to go a little deeper on or didn't understand in full context? Questions online, going once, twice?
Like the 3 or 4, or Phil, the 3 or 4 core commands are get dash command, get dash help,
Mhm.
and what would you label as
Get member,
member.
yeah.
get dash member?
Yes.
Okay.
So the properties of a commandlet are called its members. So get member is to say, show me in the layman's terms, show me the pieces of that commandlet, of the data object that comes back for that.
Yeah, we'll see that here.
Thank you.
And the reason that we emphasize that, and most of the guys that do demos will tell you to kind of learn from that sort of starting point is that, especially now with AI and resources online, you can get started by searching, find something, throw it in a command line, and it might work. But you might not actually know what it is you just did. And you get the result, right? But I'll give you a practical example. That's kind of how I learned, right? I learned before AI was a thing, but I learned by Google searches and trying to figure it out. Instead of learning in a structured environment, And so I always tell people that my knowledge of PowerShell looks like a piece of Swiss cheese. So there's some big holes on the things I never learned the right way. And so what ends up happening is as I went, and so I've gone back and tried to teach myself the better ways, but I would come to these meetings and I watch something and I'd be like, well, that's how you do that. That is so much easier than what I was doing because I never learned it the right way. And I just kept making my own workaround and I went down a trail that was so far removed. And so that's why we kind of try to tell people, learn how to ask for help in the system, learn how to find commands and learn how to find out information about the data that you're getting back. And from there, you can start to build out an idea of what the options are. So I don't know if you had.
No, that's perfect. So we're gonna go, you asked the question about get member, or what's the other thing? Okay, we saw about get command, figure out things you can do. We'll talk about get help in just a second, and that is, now we know what we can do. Now, how do I expose that to figure out what it can do, right? That's what help's gonna give us. It's basically a man page if you're in the Linux world, or just the documentation, right? And there are ways to get the documentation, figure out what it is. So, hey, I saw this thing says, go get me the, stop an EC2 instance, right? So, or get a VM or get an ED user. Well, then what does that mean? What can I do to that, right? Are there other properties? Is there things we'll talk about, even examples, that kind of thing? That's what help is all about. And now the next one beyond that is, as you just described, the third is get member, is that when you get something back, well, what is that thing, right? And so go get me the members. And what those members, as Mike just said, is the properties, but it's also more than just the properties, because ultimately the object is an object. And in that form is the object can actually do other things. There's potential that the object has its own, it's called something called in the computer science world, it's called methods, right? So there are properties and then there are methods. You can, later on, hey, I can get a service. That's a good example of a service. Well, now I want to start the service. And there's a property say, do this, right? I can do something to it without actually using it. I can use the property itself. Here's a good example is I just did a dir. Now dir again is an alias for other things, doesn't really matter, but effectively what I got back is I got back a bunch of objects. I got back seven objects. Just because in my console, you can kind of see on the left, it's kind of like a Linux thing, gives you it's 3 directories at the top. That's what D stands for. But it also formatted them on the right. Hey, it's special, so I can see it. Then I have a bunch of files, 4 files, and then one, it actually highlights the PowerShell one, the PS1 for me, just as special. If it doesn't, it just leaves it, normal gray for that form. But then when I did run the exact same thing again, as we saw, we're gonna pipe it to get member. So now for all of these things, I can't just go get me all the members of them. Tell me what these objects are. Well, look, the first thing it returned is, hey, what we got back is a directory information object. Hey, well, that directory information object had a bunch of methods. I can create things I can do. It also has properties. Hey, what are the attributes of it? Does it, is there an extension? What is its name? Who's its parent? Well, those are things that you do to directories themselves. What's the parent of the directory? Oh, but look, I also got, because of when I push down, I got multiple members. I got a different member type. I also have files because that's what it came out as. I have 2 different types of objects. So I effectively am getting 2 member properties. Hey, the properties of a file are different than the properties of a directory. You see at this point too, right?
So something to remember here, in case you're not aware of, is I have said a couple of times that like PowerShell is aware, and it's aware in different ways. So one of the ones is it's like context aware. And so when you ask for information, it returns back what it thinks you want to see based on some like built-in views and things like that. And so when Phil displayed the directory, it showed mode, last write time, length, and name. Those are not the only properties available. That's just what PowerShell chose to display on the screen. And so when we use get member, like you did earlier, it shows all these other properties that I can choose to display on the screen if I choose to. What has essentially happened is someone on the PowerShell team has looked at that commandlet and said, what are the most common things that people probably want to see when we return a directory object? When I return an AD user object. What do I want to see when I look up, all the various commandlets? They all have default views. And so there's a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot of hidden data behind the scenes that you really can't get a feel for unless you understand this get member commandlet, because that's basically saying, show me all the other stuff that I might be able to peruse about an object. And some of it is, like you said, methods. Some of it is properties. There's other things in there as well. But this is the discovery part of PowerShell that's so important. When you get comfortable discovering this information, well, now you can go back and you can change the view and you can say, well, I really don't want that. Let me drop that field. Let me add this field. And the way to do that is with get member. And so we always say there's 3 commands, which are said help, get help, get command, get member. Get member is the one that people understand the least, because get help, pretty self-explanatory. Get command, when people get the idea, they're like, okay, I look for commandlets. People don't always understand at first glance, what does get member mean? And so it's the one that probably has the most upside for most people. It has the most potential to expose things that you didn't know was there.
Yeah, and you can just see is a little bit higher up, I said, go again, take those objects and give me all the properties. That's what the star is. Again, hey, wildcard, star, give me all the properties. And you notice almost immediately it fell off the right-hand side of the screen because all I could show you is the first 2. That's all you got. So I said, oh, you know what? Well, again, there's a get member, but also I'm just going to say, just format it, right? So effectively, that was the same thing as get member and then format list, right? So I formatted it into a list form. Again, I got the exact same objects back, right? Or I got them again. I'm just scrolling up really quick. So I highlighted before that's the first one. And you can see it's a directory down at the bottom, what its attribute types, or that's the first one separated by a space. There's the second directory. There's the third directory. But noting too is that this is what a directory looks like in a list form. Hey, look, this is what a file looks like in a list form. A little bit longer, and it has other attributes. It has version info that didn't exist with directory. So I got 2 different parts, all output in the same form, or similar form. So it just gave it to me in a list. So I guess I'm going to jump into something I don't think I wrote anything about. But right now we're talking about everything on the console. There's no reason you couldn't say there's a bunch of, there's the out. Hey, again, we're using tab complete to get our thing. Our default is what you see on the screen. Hey, you could take this and send it to a file, send it to a host itself, send it to null, basically just done it. There's a printer, I don't know who's using that, and then out string. So there's something called out grid view. This is a grid view. It's kind of interesting because you typically use this pretty interesting. I get that same default output, but now I have this GUI that I can work with. Hey, I'm like zooming at this point, but hey, here's this thing I can select from a list. It's almost like this idea. I wasn't really prepared to talk about out grid view. There's something called, and then there's a pass through, right? So getting the directory, again, a piping, that's kind of we'll eventually get to it. We're kind of just showing it live, right? Instead of I'm going to get the members, yes, but now I want to go a little bit beyond the members just told me about the members. I want to go get the items and actually put it into a view. So here is the view, but notice like the first one and the second one, I did. Now I actually have an OK button at the bottom. Now I can zoom in, Control plus. I can zoom. Right? And you know what? I can't see all of that. So now I have this GUI interface that I can play with. Right, all the pieces. You know what? I'm going to select this one and that one and this one. Right? This is what I want to choose. So if I had a list of servers, actually, I think that's what I got back out. Right? I took that and I piped it out the other end. I'm living dangerously. I'm just going to play a game. CSV. I have computers. Yep, I do. So I'm using a commandlet we didn't see before. There's something you've never seen, but import CSV. well, actually, we're just gonna go with what we have, because I have some ideas at this point, right? So I generated this CSV that has some stuff, so kind of like real world experience at this point. So I'm gonna say invoke item, shorthand, invoke item, right? I'm gonna use invoke item, or basically, I'm just gonna double click on a CSV file. Hey, it's gonna open a cell. This is what's inside the file, right? And so sometimes people have this whole thing where, hey, I have an entire document that somebody gave me. Well, especially with the CSV, I can just very easily go, all right, well, give me the entire CSV. I'm gonna stick it into a variable, and now we're gonna, go really crazy. We're gonna jump into a bunch of other stuff. But so, you know what, I'm gonna stick it at the top of the screen. It's clear screen. Right? Variable equals the output, right? I'm taking the whatever comes out of the import CSV. Again, we don't put anything, it dumped it to this console. We also saw, hey, we can output it to a file. You know what? We can even just stick it inside of a variable. I didn't see anything. What happened? Well, actually, it's inside the variable itself. So when I do the variable itself, well, that's what I got. Right? So this is what's inside of there. And as Mike said, the idea, well, how do you know what this is? So I'm going to get its members, right? I don't know what's inside of this. Members. Right? So I have this variable, but I don't know what its structure is. Right? Hey, it is a custom object, doesn't really care, but it's a constructed object on the fly. It has 4 node properties, one called computer name, one called owner, one called path, and one called service name. That kind of looks familiar. There's all my columns, right? And so now I've kind of put a bunch of pieces together, and that's why you would use get member. That's kind of like a practical application of using it. I'm trying to think of what other place where you can do it. Go ahead.
I may be wrong with this, but I feel like it's a problem that is, and I don't even want to say a problem, but a dynamic that's unique to PowerShell in the sense that I don't know, there's a lot of people that can jump into Bash, Python, C#, do a one-liner. The languages are usually not that forgiving. Literally, most of our entryways into PowerShell is someone gave me a command that gets me something, and we probably all started with one-liners. And so it's the same language that allows you to work in a one-liner, and it makes all the noise go away so that it's simple. But it's also the same language that when you understand how to pull back the covers, you see the full breadth of the language that makes it approach almost like a full programming language. Many people would argue that it is. That's the unique thing that I find that makes PowerShell so interesting is that you can go as deep as you want with the language, and you can go deeper and deeper and uncover more and more and see how the sausage is made behind the scenes. Or you can just type any user name and get back same account name, title and the department and move on and not now have to know any of it. And it's all the same. You don't need a degree to get started with simple PowerShell. But this is the point we're trying to make here is that there are layers. And when you understand how to get past the layers, you start to discover lots of information that may be useful. Maybe not, depending on your situation. And so that's why we kind of preach this, like learning of these core commandlets and how to navigate the system. Because Phil's just kind of winging it here, and Phil is an expert at PowerShell, but he's not doing anything here that any of us might want to do on our own. He's just doing it at a faster rate. He's just exploring the language and coming back with data and saying, that looks interesting. Let me see what more I can find about it.
Yep.
And I think everybody wants to do that, but you hit these natural roadblocks. And like, I don't know how to take the next step. And so this is about trying to uncover ways for you to see how you can sort of pull back the veil and get to the next layer. So We can keep going. I don't know how long you want to go. You're at like an hour and a half already.
Yeah, I think I'm actually gonna wrap up. I'm gonna kind of talk really,
Yeah.
you know, I wanted to, it was a good transition because I'm not getting to my other pages because we just started with commands and we kind of jumped into other places. We talked about some concepts that were truly, into a later stage, but it was good to actually see it in practice. And so we kind of talked to some of that other parts. We talked about help. I'm gonna wrap up with help in just a second, but I want to show quickly as Mike was talking, I actually used a bunch of stuff and did some kind of stuff that just want to show you what I did at this point. So I logged into AWS, right? I used a login to AWS. I still had an SSO session, so it's still there. I defined the connection that I want to connect from, and then all I just did was just blindly run, go get me the S3 buckets. So all the S3 buckets and all the different regions for this account that I have, right? Hey, here's some, and I created some buckets for our meeting, hey, kind of thing. We're not getting to this point, but okay, right? So there's a bunch of buckets and I put some files into it. As we just saw, hey, what can I do with a bucket, right? So I said, go get me the members. Once I got the buckets, well, then this is what properties are available. I immediately go, well, that wasn't very, interesting. So that's why I kept going. I didn't do anything with that. But I'm like, all right, well, the only thing I can do to buckets is actually look from here. There's probably some other stuff with buckets that I can figure out, but that's not what's here. That's what came back. So then I said, well, go get me the objects inside of a particular bucket. Hey, I just put a bunch of files there, right? So, hey, this is what comes back, assuming that what I happened. I formatted just that one property because there's other stuff, right? So then get the buckets, and then again, get member. Hey, actually what comes back is a bunch of other stuff. So I used get member to tell me what type of object, what does that look like? What are all its properties? And it just tells me kind of like the underlying covers of what it is. Hey, actually the object that comes back is an S3 model owner. That's the actual object type it happens to be. Sometimes it's a string, sometimes it's other stuff that we saw up here. They're just a bunch of strings, right? But actually we have richer objects when they come back for an S3 object. We get an actual instantiated another type of object. So instead of getting the member of that S3 objects that we come for each one of these objects, I got them. They all happen to be the same one, so I only got one type. All right, so that was its members, tells me what about the type of objects that I got back. Well, you know what? Let me just format it into a list, so give me all the properties. So now here is that first object. Right? It gives me its E tag, what its key is, basically its name as far as that concerned, and all the other parts. So now I can see there's actually some owner information deep inside the owner, right? So this is what that really looks like. And really quickly, I didn't do anything other than discovering what's there. I used the tooling that we have to then figure out the next part, right? And again, we use get member to give me more pieces. We didn't really talk so much about formatting, but we did talk about formatting, but not officially, but formatting into a list. And there is aliases for a bunch of stuff. I think the only other thing that we kind of did is just like get alias. Hey, I didn't do anything. I don't know what other aliases are out there. Well, freaking just ask for it. Go give me all the aliases. Well, how do I know what a particular alias was? You saw gave me the command, it gives me the piece. Or I see that FL is just format list, FT, format table, format Y, format other stuff, right? I don't have to know any of this stuff, right? I can use other commands that will get me the information I'm looking for, right? And so the only thing I want to kind of wrap up with too at this point, because we're deeply running out of time, and I'm having a good time. Is help, right? We talked about help. Right? It's basically the man pages, right? If you're in the Linux world, it's the man page or it's the documentation. It's in the console documentation. There's something like this, right? But I want to help get something, right? I'm going to use help for a get command, I'm going to getting the help for get command. We saw this earlier before, right? But I'm actually we're just going to do this off at this point. So help get S3 bucket. I just tab completed ACL. I don't know what this does. It calls the S3 ACL API operation. This operation is not supported for directory buckets, right? So I don't even, I just tab completed it. I was looking for a bucket and I got an ACL. All right, now I can read the documentation on what that does. Just the one thing that I didn't do. Help get module. Right. Kind of talked about this point. Is there is this structure. I want to kind of just briefly talk about the idea of how to read this thing. Right. So this idea of if it's in brackets means it's optional. You don't actually have to put it in there, but you can get module and if you don't have to actually put the word name. You can just put a string at the end of it and it will put it into there and then it will run that, right? So that's what this is saying. So you can see that there's another version. If I just put a string and I use the list available, it'll run this version of that module, of this commandlet. So it can take two different ways in which to do things. There is another version where it takes a PS session. There's another one that takes a sim session. You don't know what those are, but it doesn't really matter at this point. You can then read below is, hey, what the individual parameters we kind of saw at this point. Why is it there? So all is an optional parameter. It's optional because it's in square brackets, right? I'm trying to think of anyone that forces you to put a name in. There's very few that actually do. But you can figure out at this point, we didn't even get to the idea of actually talking about pipelines. So I think I'm going to do another session in a couple of weeks. We'll just go to the next, option, right? Actually talk about the pipeline itself. So does this parameter support pipeline input? Nope, false. Does this parameter support pipeline input? We're going to get to name. Go down to name, list available, false. Name, hey, it does. And it is a structure called by value, right? And so you can pipe and get into name, right? We'll talk about that later, but we're gonna run out of time, right? So with the help itself, you can then come figure out what the properties can and can't do. Do they take pipeline input? Do they not take pipeline input? I know I hadn't described what that really looks like, but it will work that form and you can figure at that point. So the whole idea is that you can get to the different, you can read the different parts. And the only last one is if you're using help, the best one to do, I'm going to say MLN. There is a property called examples. Oh, it's good enough. I don't want to do that.
And say another thing, when I use GitHelp, I like the show in window.
Yeah.
So that way I can have it open
Trying to think
and read it a little bit easier at the same time as typing in the console.
Trying to think of
Show in.
that gives you.
Show in window. And it takes
Dash
that
show
entire
window.
thing and opens it in like a GUI window
Yeah, dash show window.
or show window.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you examples. So I'm going to say get 80 user examples, right? That's another good one. I have that one installed. Which one has good example?
Get service examples.
Service, yeah, get service. That's a good one. Examples.
There's a dash online too, and it'll spawn. It'll spawn.
No, but I don't have that.
Get service set. You set or set? It's set. Yeah, wow. You're no fun, Phil. Come on, what the heck?
I don't know if I have
Examples.
I think I need to update help. I don't think it's installed.
Yeah.
So here you go. Update help is another one. It's going to take a long time to do it, but it will go and figure out all the commandlets you have and then download the help for you.
Yeah.
So we're actually not going to, you know what? We kind of tried this. So examples is going to use what's on my local machine. We have show window. So that gives you a window. We kind of saw before, just like out grid view. So there's a view, and I can have it as a separate window. Hey, I can use this as a side window, keep it as a reference, and then continue to work in the console itself, right? That is an option. But one of the other options is actually, we will get the examples. If we just do, there is an online. And what does it do? Is it takes you to the actual webpage of where that commandlet is. So we can then scroll all the way down, and here's the examples. So they had created an example. Hey, you can just get service, or get service, and hey, it's using the wildcards. It kind of talks about get service begins with da 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 da. Right? Here's some other examples in which you can use those pieces. Get service. Hey, I can give it a name. I can exclude other names. All right, I didn't know that. Hey, we talked about this other thing where it was piping. So I can get the service. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this other commandlet. We can look that up, is where, and then this other structure we'll talk about later on when we get more basics, 2.0, is, hey, where the status of the object, because remember, the object itself has properties where the status is short for equals running. Hey, I'm going to say get all the services, throw them over here. This guy is going to say where, whatever that property, where the current item equals running, then I stick it out the other end. Right? So we're going to run this one really quick. Questions?
You could drop that. I mean, the help is great. I mean,
Yep.
lots of editors, but you could drop that into an AI tool and say, hey, explain this command to me.
Yeah,
And
sure.
like I'm a fifth grader or something.
You can too.
We're getting thrown out. We gotta wrap it up.
Okay.
It's 8:00.
8 o'clock?
Yeah.
All right. So we didn't get very far, but we've been very interactive, and that's what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to be interactive. We're going to do another session in 2 weeks. So our next meeting in 2 weeks is going to be, Mike's going to do functions. What you going to do?
Parsing logs.
Parsing logs. All right. We're going to do functions too. That's also going to be on the list. And we'll go from there. Parsing logs. We're going to do, then we're going to do some AI stuff in a month. So 2 weeks, we'll come back. 2 weeks will be actually online. So we'll shift 2 hours later, because instead of we meet here at 6 o'clock, have dinner, but now that we're not going to meet in person, you do your own thing, come back online. The meeting be online. It'll be on Meetup, or just as everybody who is remote, you don't have to worry about it. They just joined meeting.rtpsug.com, meeting.rtpsug.com. It'll take you to this meeting, right? And that's what you'll be.
So let's just wrap up the recording. So if you've been watching at home and you made it this far, thanks for sticking with us. We covered lots and lots and lots of things within the PowerShell console, and things that are and possibilities of how you can use the language to your advantage. We hope you enjoyed it, and we have plenty of other content that you can watch, so check out our channel. If you'd like to really be part of the magic that is coming and joining us in person, or while we're live, check us out at rtpsug.com, or find us on Meetup with the same letters, and you can join us at the next meeting, and then you get to answer the questions. And so we want to say thank you to Phil for sharing his knowledge with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed yourselves, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I don't know who's recording, so.
Did PowerShell install on Linux?
Let's find out. Woohoo!
All right, so now that that's over, thanks guys for sticking around. So I just wanted to mention when I demo the next meeting, if I get my crap together, I want to make that interactive. So the idea is that I'll have 3 or 4 log files. We'll post them on a public link. You can pull them down if you want, and then we can go through the commandlets together. And then instead of just watching, we can actually parse logs and try different things. So we'll try to make it an interactive thing. I'm not going to go incredibly deep. I'm going to try to focus myself on 4 or 5 commandlets and sort of learn how to use those commandlets really well. And then we'll probably call it a wrap there. But it should be a good time. We'll come up with some examples, and I think Mr. Judd, who's online tonight, might be assisting me a little bit on that. We'll see. So, Rich Gillen joined from Anchorage, Alaska. That's awesome. Nice to meet you, Rich.
There's a scope installed in model. Oh,
Yep.
There's your,
Yeah, we have to use that at work because they only allow us to install in the user scope. So,
so it probably puts it in basically into the home instead of the actual USR.
you can do current user for the currently, if you're like logged as a regular user, and that'll be in your space.
Yeah, because it'll put it into the, field local, share. Right, that's where that is the location of what those modules will be.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're living on Linux. I didn't realize. I said on Windows, but same
But
concept.
similar to that thing. So the question earlier was asked about, about scoping and what it looks like. Here is some of that same pieces just in.
You guys want some tidbit time?
Hold on. No, actually, you can tidbit for the people on.
Well, we have like,
You
10
gotta get
minutes or
out.
so.
All
Yeah,
right.
we have it's a room on loan. And the
Okay.
person loaning it to us said, I'd like to go
I can do it
home."
really fast if Phil's willing to drive.
Can you do
All
it?
right, hold on.
Can you do it Phil fast?
I can do it Phil fast. I can talk faster than he can type.
Go. What do you want to see?
All right, do ls here. All right, so what you get is the default one. So do ls space -l. That's the long list. Now do dir. Notice how those look exactly the same, but they got different headers than you have on Windows. So if you go back to Windows and you look at it, it has similar but different headings, right? And the point is that when they develop these things, the DOS command for when you do CMD and you do dir, it puts the various headings in the various order. So the formatter for this is exactly the same. That doesn't work because that's a Linux thing, not a Windows thing.
Yeah.
So the mode, the last write time, the size, and the name come from DOS. This one, dir, comes from ls-l.
And it's formatted in that form.
Yeah, and it's what's known as a default formatter for just standard output. Now, if you do the ls and you pipe that into select star, then you're gonna see every property there is for all the files.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Stephen.
See, quick.
Quick.